Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for today. This is our global webinar series featuring our two trainers from our education team, Maggie Hepburn, Learning Experience Principal, and Drew Samuth, Client Educator. For this webinar, we're going to discuss the top 10 tips to stay the course and get ahead in InterAction. My name is Annie, and I'm the Head of Marketing for InterAction Americas, and today I'll be your host. This webinar series is complimentary to our clients and is offered at 3 different times throughout the day, allowing options to participate from anywhere in the world. If you are dialing in from another country and are having issues with your audio, please refer to the email that was sent with the link to this webinar and click the other country options for dialing opportunities. Today, Maggie and Drew will discuss best practices that you and your users can introduce today to improve the quality of your InterAction data. Topics to be covered are creating a remote data quality plan and engaging remote users. If you'll please take a quick second to look at the right-hand side of your control panel, you'll see there's an opportunity to ask questions. We encourage you to use that throughout the session today. And then at the end, we'll do one last call and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Please note, we're also recording today's session and all attendees will receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides. Also, there's a brief survey, at the end of the webinar today. And we please ask you to take a moment to complete that because it will help with us and when we plan our future events that will help you guys. All right, with that, Maggie, I'll go ahead and turn the webinar over to you.
Okay, thanks, Annie. Hey, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. Thank you for making the time. We'll spend a little time together today going over these topics with you. You know, Drew and I have actually been hearing from a lot of you about staying productive during this time, worries about that. It's such a weird time right now, right? So we figured, hey, now's as good a time as any to kind of get on a session like this and really work through some of our advice. At least in an area that we have some expertise in, which is your CRM or your InterAction system. So, hey, let's go ahead and get right into it, right? So how do you stay productive at this time? You know, there's so much craziness, there are fires you're fighting. I know, trust me, we're fighting them too. But how can you really stay focused? And more importantly, how are you going to come out of this even stronger? That's really what we want to be thinking about, right? So I'm guessing you're being pulled in many different directions right now. That's understandable. But let's just take a breath, sip on your beverage, whatever you have handy, and let's think about some of these ways that you can make the most of this remote situation and really figure out, you know, what's next? What do we do now? So today, you know, it's really such an important time for your firm to kind of stand strong on the intelligence and the data that you have in your system, and for you to really have a strong grip on how it's going to help you support your clients in their time of need, right? So we're going to take a peek at some things that can make sure you're doing that. First, I'd like to share some strategies here with you around creating a remote data quality plan. It's so weird to me because it feels like, I don't know about you, but it feels like some things are going kind of a million miles a minute and other things are on pause. It's very strange right now. So from this remote perspective, we just want to be sure that, you know, even if your folks are at home, you know, we don't want them feeling like they're fending for themselves in this system. We want to do some data quality work to really help them feel confident about how they can individually move forward with business development, just like you guys will, right? And then soon here, I'll pass it over to Drew to really share how you can kind of make sure your users are staying engaged, right? As they're obviously working from home too. This could really be a great time actually to help them build up some knowledge around the system, help them better navigate inside, and make sure that you're getting the intelligence you need to really keep things going and stay that course, right? So if you don't mind, I'd actually like to start really quick with a poll. We're going to throw a poll up here on the screen. So Lauren, if I could ask for your help with that. As you can see there, you know, if you had to pick one, for how many of you right now is it really most immediate to get your data and your intelligence tidied up, more the data quality side of things? And for how many of you is it really more important about that your end users stay in the loop and kind of provide that intelligence that you're needing? So if you'll just take a sec and maybe answer that. We'll give it a second to let some of those come in. Yeah. And by the way, I know there's not a both option. I know you're sitting there going, wait, both are important. I know, but I'm making you choose. I'm the mean teacher today. Okay. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Lauren, I think we can go ahead and put up those results, give or take. Look at that. It's really kind of half and half. That's fantastic. I mean, again, I know many of you probably wanted to say both of these are a priority for me. Absolutely. But hey, you're in the right place because we're going to talk about both of those things today. So as needed, you can take kind of some advice from both sides of it. So let's go ahead, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with the data quality side of things here. Now, most of these items that are popping up on the screen are probably nothing new for you, especially if you've ever asked me about your data quality. These are things I preach all the time, but I'd like you to consider maybe how important they are right now, right? With your people scattered all over the place. Your fee earners are going to need accurate, reliable information in your system, you know, not just for clients who currently need your help and guidance, but who knows, right? As the situation plays out, we're going to need to be able to identify opportunities for growth. And that's all based on the quality of the information you have in the system. So, you know, maybe ask yourself, what do you have in there for them, right? And this whole idea of being remote, I always feel like, you know, I was just thinking about this the other day, being remote kind of feels like now the system represents you, right? It speaks for you in a way. So, you know, can they count on what we have in there to get them further? You know, does your data say, hey, we're on it, right? We're well organized. People can find what they need in the system when they need it. It's at their fingertips. You know, they have the intelligence they need to make those quick, solid decisions right now. Or does your system kind of say, well, we do the best we can when we have time, right? Kind of like that spare bedroom upstairs that you store stuff in, right? And then shut the door so no one sees it. That's really what we're thinking about here. And of course, we want to be in the former situation, right? We want to feel confident about what we have. So today, I'm just going to quickly walk through these 5 items. And, you know, these are things maybe you've fallen behind on in the past, but this may be an optimal time to really remember that, you know, just doing a little bit of this stuff, especially now, is going to give you kind of a leg up, right? In terms of creating a tidy, simplified system that's ready for your users to use and give them what they need, you know, spur of the moment now as they need it, right? So let's start on the left there. We'll move to another slide about archiving. Archiving irrelevant contacts. Now, let's get back to that guest room. Oh, it's still there, right? That door's still shut, but you know it, you know what's in there. First of all, I would ask you, of all the stuff you have in there, how much of it really could be purged, right? I mean, let's face it, come on now. If we take a critical eye and really look at what's in there, we could probably purge quite a bit. Am I right? Yeah, you know I am. That's probably true of your InterAction system as well, or your CRM, right? Because, you know, and by the way, for those of you who have archived or purged in the past, it's still good to do it on a regular basis. But, you know, check out some of these bullets here. How many contacts aren't known by anybody, right? How many have you not been engaged with in terms of activities for a while? How many aren't on any mailing lists or have very little or hardly any contact data, right? That for some of these, we do have out-of-the-box searches available that can help you find them instantly, right? And you can make some decisions about what you want to do with those and how you want to deal with them. Now, let me be clear. When I talk about archiving, I'm not talking about deleting necessarily. Deleting is not something that we recommend generally, unless the contact should not have been in your system to begin with. For example, somebody shared their mom into the system or their Delta Airlines reward number, right? Lord knows we've seen enough of that in the system in the past, right? But, you know, as you really get down to brass tacks and you kind of see those contacts that really don't seem to be relevant to your business development, you know, the whole idea is, can we archive them away? Can we get them away from the firm list to help us focus on what's most important? And I'll tell you, archiving is actually quite simple. It's just a matter of tactically in your system of kind of unsourcing from the firm list and resourcing in another folder. I encourage you in the survey after this webinar today, if you want to note that if you're interested in receiving some more information from us about how to archive, we're happy to talk with you about that, maybe provide some more detailed instructions on how to do that. But aside from that, if you think about the benefits of getting those irrelevant contacts away from here, first of all, you're kind of reducing that big pool. You're reducing that main pool of contacts to a more relevant pool. And not only that, but obviously it's smaller, right? And so that's just less for you to manage. So the time you do spend on data quality is well spent. And if you think about it from your user's perspective, that's a smaller pool for them to work through in terms of opportunities, really being sure we're looking at the right contacts and, seeing the bigger picture of those contacts and what we can do for them in terms of business, right? So I've actually worked with a number of clients for quite some time now, about even some of you, by the way, that may be on this call, but we've had a chance to sit down and really scrutinize the entire contact collection, right? We've been able to kind of look through it and see what really needs to be in there. As a matter of fact, I worked with a client last fall. This is one of the most glorious moments, I have to tell you. We sat down, we talked about what might indicate irrelevant contacts. We did some searches, and we discovered out of 1.4 million contacts, that 700,000 of them, 50% of them, were not currently contributing to business development. So we questioned, why are they even in there? And they ended up archiving or purging some. There were some that could be purged completely. But I have to tell you, if you think about it, that's 700,000 contacts now that don't need to be merged, that don't need to be associated to anything, that don't need to be cleaned up in any way, right? So again, you're reducing that overall pool of what you even need to manage. And, bonus, your searches are going to run faster because you have less to search against, and users are going to be able to find what they need without all that noise. That's always a bonus for them, right? So again, take a look at these options on this slide. Think about what might benefit you in terms of, thinking about what you might want to archive away. And by the way, remember, archiving doesn't mean that you're deleting, right? Like I said, so they can always come back. You can always bring them back into the mix if necessary down the road. But by archiving, you're not losing any attached information like activities and things like that from the past. So look in your searches when you get a chance back in your system. Look in your search list. You should see some in there that are titled CDM. That's short for Contact Data Management. So see if you see those in there, and you'll see a few of these, not all 4 of these, but those searches are right there for you, assuming you've upgraded recently, of course. But those can be really handy in keeping the pool of contacts smaller and more manageable. Okay. All right, I'm going to combine items 2 and 3 here next. DCM and your ticket inbox. They really kind of go hand in hand, right? Like salt and pepper. They go together. I was thinking also the other day, there's probably going to be a lot more engagement right now with contacts. If anything, it's just you and your fee earners and whatnot kind of reaching out to clients, wanting to hold their hand, make sure they're doing okay, offering services and support in whatever they might need at this time. This is going to be important engagement, right? And so we want you to kind of remember that you may start to see more tickets in your system. You might have more things coming through DCM, right? And that's okay. That's to be expected potentially, but I want you to think about your DCM rules that are generating those tickets. So if you've ever done a health check with us in the past, some of you may have, one of the things we often recommend is that you take a peek at your DCM rules to really check and see, am I getting tickets for the things that I really need to be getting them for? This is the last time I want you to be, or this is the worst time. I wouldn't want you right now to be overwhelmed with tickets, right? That's the last thing you need. But if you address those rules and kind of cut them down to what's really most important, you're going to have a much better handle on all of this. I tell you, it's kind of funny because we get into this really bad habit of looking at the overall ticket count, right? We open our ticket inbox, we look down in the corner and we're like, oh, 10,000 tickets or whatever, right? But the funny thing is, if you think about, for example, trying to lose weight, we get on that scale and we let that one overwhelming, often discouraging number sometimes kind of take over our brain. We're not looking at the other things like, oh, do my clothes fit better now? Do I have more energy to run around the yard with the kids? Which is about all we can do right now, right? But, I'd encourage you instead to look at your tickets in that way. It's not about that count, because number one, it doesn't necessarily have to be that high. And second, you can look at your tickets in a different way, and then it doesn't feel so overwhelming. Now, I know you might say that's easier said than done, Maggie. Sure. But I do have some ideas for you, right? So imagine I took that tally away. Imagine I took that out of your program. You couldn't even see a ticket count anymore without counting them yourself. You naturally would think about them differently. You would reprioritize how you do them. You would group them together, maybe by easy tickets first. You would really just be forced to kind of look at it differently, think about it differently. So, by the way, on a side note, I know some of you might be sitting there thinking, oh, we're good. We stay on top of our tickets pretty well. We got it under control. Kind of like those really naturally thin people who can eat a whole bag of snacks and not gain a pound. I see you out there. I gain that pound and another pound when I do. But, for most of us, this is certainly something we can revisit, right? And this is a good time to do that. So ask yourself, what are you getting tickets for? What are you getting tickets for? I would say, as a nice action item here today, one big step you can take is to just focus on your review tickets, all right? It's kind of funny. Review tickets, I think some of you know you have, there are 3 types of tickets you can generate generally. Your accept tickets, they're not really tickets, but you can set rules to accept, review, or submit. If something's set to accept, great, right? It goes on through, we don't even see it, sight unseen, it goes to the database. We clearly have prioritized those low, right? Not important enough to look at. Submit is something that's generally pretty important, so we want to look at that. We stop it completely. But then you have this middle ground, this review option. And I always feel like, the review option is one of those things where it's kind of like, oh, hey, FYI, right? There's a ticket, a change has been made, and everybody can see it. Everybody already has it, but I'm just letting you know via the ticket, right? So most of us don't have the luxury of time to go through those. And I talk to people and I ask them, hey, why do you get review tickets? What's the importance of them for you? And they usually, and you may be the same, but people usually say things like, well, I want to make sure the data is standardized. I want to make sure everything got associated. I want to make sure, someone didn't put in a duplicate address manually instead of just hooking it up to the company. And that's great. But I want to remind you, even just those 3 examples, we have tools in the system for you that do all of that, right? So instead of doing everything in the ticket inbox, because that's just going to give you more tickets, right? Instead, what if you pivoted some of that work out and did it more against the database directly? That's going to give you a lot more control. You think about tickets, those are really reactive, right? Somebody does something and we have to deal with it. They do something else, we have to deal with it, right? But by moving that work, that effort out against your database, you're actually saying, proactively, I'm going to search today for unassociated people and take care of those. Today, I'm going to look for empty email addresses and work on getting those completed in some way, or whatever it might be, right? So you actually control the process and you're more proactive about doing it. And then you can fit it into your schedule when you have a little bit of time to do it, right? It doesn't have to be a ticket every single time. So keep that in mind. Even standardization, people are like, oh, well, I need to make sure things are spelled out and, all of that good stuff. Well, remember, many of you already have a new data minder tool called, well, it's not that new, called data normalization, right? Remember, data normalization, that's what it does in terms of, say, job titles, street stuff like Parkway, Boulevard. You get to set up those rules real quick and everything on the way in will be changed for you automatically. That's not something you need to look at or worry about when tickets come in. So keep that in mind. You have a lot of tools outside the system that are going to help you get everything the way you want it to be without having to do it through tickets, okay? Now, we always start with DCM rules, right? So again, consider kind of maybe not thinking about those review tickets anymore, kind of diverting them to either to accept or submit. That's my big piece of advice here, right? Something's either important enough to look at or it's not. So maybe look at those rules and reassess that situation. But again, we always start by looking at DCM rules because that's what's creating the ticket, right? And so I call that part, the DCM rules, I call that stopping the bleeding. Let's stop the bleeding first. then we can go look at what we have in our ticket inbox and work through it. So I've also recently worked with a number of clients on their ticket inbox, right? And again, some of you may be on this webinar. Oftentimes in either one day or sometimes even a half day, we're able to identify and get rid of, up to 90% of their tickets. 90% of their tickets, just by rethinking how we look at tickets and how we think about them, right? Last Wednesday, as a matter of fact, I was working with a client. She had 5,500 tickets, 5,500 plus, right? Some extras there. We sat down in her inbox and, well, virtually, of course, and we started going through them. And the first thing we identified were 270 tickets that were either outdated, awesome, get rid of those, or they were unassociated company tickets. And so, but the funny thing was, she was actually very diligent about doing unassociated companies or unassociated people in her database. She would run the search and she would find them and associate them. And so I said to her, we can turn off those tickets. If you're doing that diligently elsewhere, you don't need to get these tickets anymore. She was thrilled about that, right? But that still left us with quite a few tickets. So the next thing we noticed were the IQ tickets. There were 4,700 of them. Out of 5,500, 4,700 of them were IQ tickets. Now, some of you know about our InterAction IQ product. It's a signature capture tool that grabs signatures from your folks' email exchanges. It potentially brings contacts in, updates in, and certainly measures engagement levels. Some of you may be using plenty of other tools out there that do that kind of stuff too. But if you think about it, regardless of whether it's IQ or a tool you use, that's some of the most trustworthy data you get, right? That is, I call it straight from the horse's mouth, right? That's right from their signature line, typically recently. So you got to kind of assume that is correct, right? And in that case, there's no research that needs to be done. You don't need to Google those people. You take it for what it is. So once she realized, that she really only had at this point 10% of her 10% of her tickets, to look through, there was actually an audible gasp. It was fantastic. Of course, as a trainer, that felt really good. But she realized, gosh, I don't need to focus so much. I don't need to look at that 5,500 and feel completely overwhelmed. Now, by the way, I also think that some of you, when you hear that 5,500 number, you're thinking, I wish I only had 5,500 tickets. I get it. But it also has to do, with how many contacts you have in your database and that kind of stuff. So listen, I'm not saying go rogue and just willy-nilly kind of start processing everything randomly without looking at it. But what I am saying is that you can be smart or smarter about it. I promise you can do this. Totally.
Absolutely, Maggie. I just want to jump in really quick because I have some recent class stories that I have experienced that we're talking about just this exactly, looking at our tickets and then looking for, an opportunity. I had a student that was looking in their own environment at the same time in class. They had about 8,000 tickets total. That's not unusual, but there was a lot of opportunities to get tickets. We sorted by the submits and reviews, and out of about 6,000 review tickets, 5,000 of them were a year old. Now, can you imagine reverting any of those year-old tickets and then reverting that data back to such old contact details? We're already using those in our public list. We're already marketing to these people. So let's just find those old review tickets, I think. Let's make that hard cut and then start from scratch, especially if you're making some of those DCM adjustments that you were talking about, Maggie. I think that's great.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's really about being ruthless. You've got to be ruthless. You can do it. Be smart, but be ruthless. That's what I would say about that. Okay, you can do it. You can really do it. All right. So I'm going to finish my section today by rolling up items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sorry. Items 4 and 5, which kind of go together as well, give or take. We're talking about duplicate management and company association here. Now, going back to that idea that, this may be a time when your users are actually going to rely on and kind of engage with your CRM probably more than they ever have. They're feeling alone, they're feeling isolated. This is their lifeline, right? So if that's the case, then it's even more important than ever that, contacts are as duplicate free as possible. Now, I do want to make sure that you also realize you should be prioritizing those, right? We can't sit there and say, I've got to get my entire database duplicate free. That's not going to happen, right? You're too busy right now. But what you can do is potentially focus on those highest priority contacts. You know, I know you don't want a fee earner kind of sitting at home, feeling alone, you know, unsure about what's right and what's not right in the system. Sometimes it's bad enough when in the office and they feel that way, right? Let this be their lifeline. Maybe try to spend some of your remote time, if you can find it at all, right? Just going through and getting clients done. Maybe just clients, right? Maybe if you have the time, take a peek at alumni. What you want to be thinking about is who are the contacts right now that they're probably most looking at, that they're probably most relying on in this weird time to keep business continuity going, right? So if you think about that, that will give you your prioritization list. Don't forget to use company association on your search or on your contacts as well, your people contacts. You can do that in bulk, right? We have a tool for that. So just making sure they're associated. I do encourage you on a side note as well to make sure that you work on company data before you work on people data in general, right? So if I'm merging duplicates, I'm going to merge my companies first as best I can, then I work on people. Why? Because of course, I think some of you know, when you work on company stuff and get it all tidied up, a lot of those people are associated to those companies already. So a lot of that company stuff will trickle down and update the people on the fly. So it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone, right? But I do want to remind you of something that we've noticed lately, more so than ever. But once we started looking at the patterns, we realized, you know, clients who are successful with duplicate management and company association types of tasks, they are so because they're doing it on a consistent, regular basis. That's huge, as you can imagine, right? So as a matter of fact, we had some client advisor hours that we put on now. You can kind of connect into those things. I'm not sure how often, forgive me. But just last week, a client was mentioning that she runs a dupe search once a week. And whatever she finds, she takes the time to merge them. And she does this because she knows if she doesn't do it once a week, it's going to get completely out of hand. I think you might realize that too. Yours may already be out of hand. And it's like, oh, I don't even want to tackle it, right? But the key here is consistency. You got to start somewhere. So start today, right? And remember that association cleanup tool should follow any dupe work that you do, just to make sure people are fully now connected to maybe that one version of the company that you have. But if you think about the benefits of this, you know, not only, like I've already mentioned, your users are going to be able to see one version of these contacts, right? But also, if you think about on the company association side of things, you know, combined with maybe some FDA rules, that's where the system really kicks in with automation for you, ensuring now that all those people are in the right segmentation lists in your system, the right contact type folders, for example, or even potentially shot out into the right marketing lists. And I know I've heard from a lot of you about lists you're doing right now, communications you're sending. That's really all we can do, it feels like, right? We can't do events, we can't do that kind of stuff. So a lot of communications are going out from you guys, from your fee earners directly. It's so important, you know, that they get into those right folders so we can communicate with them about how we can support them, how we can help them, how we can carry them through this, right? So going back to that weight loss example, you know, you can't work out hard once every 6 months. Right? I can't work out really hard in January and then work out really hard again in July. That is not going to get me anything, nothing at all. Consistency is the key, right? It's got to be small bits consistently over time. You know that. And it's exactly the same for your data quality. That's what's going to make the difference. Okay. So if I may, in summary, I will say, if it ain't relevant to business development, archive it. Reassess your DCM rules. Again, a good approach is to think about, for now, review tickets. Do you really need to get them? Either something's important enough to look at or it's not. And be ruthless. Be ruthless with those tickets. You can do it, right? Be smart, but be ruthless. Get those high priority dupes merged. That's important. and then also ensure that those folks are associated to their companies appropriately. 5 things. I'm going to give you a high five on that. Okay. But as you can imagine, all these things I've just been talking about, that's stuff that we're familiar with, a lot of us on this call, things that we long to do and hope to do on a regular basis, ideally. But that's really just the broader data quality part of it. I want you to now kind of pivot and think about, well, what about all the intelligence in the system, right? What about all the activities? What's going on right now with your fee earners? Are they reaching out to people? Are they talking to people? Oh, they are, right? Are they building new relationships right now? Are they strengthening current relationships right now? Of course they are. Surely they are. But in this weird time when we're all so distant, how do we know that, right? So you can have all the data quality you want, but we also need the intelligence paired with that, so that when we now in the future go to use this for business development, again, we've kind of stayed that course. We have that intelligence in the system. And sadly, the way we get most of that is from our users, right? So this is where I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Drew. He's going to talk to you about, as he'll tell you, about what you can be doing with your end users right now to kind of help keep them engaged in this process.
Great. Thank you so much, Maggie. Those are a lot of great tips that can really make some meaningful impacts in our data quality. Thanks for sharing all that. And then thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. It gives me a reason to clean up, even if it's just from the waist up. But hopefully you leave our webinar today with some good interaction inspiration. I do want to pivot now from the back-end data quality work that Maggie was discussing and talk about our front-end users, our lawyers, our CPAs, consultants, and assistants and support staff. I think if anybody is most affected by all of this change, it is probably our assistants and our support staff. I think that the rest of us might be a little bit more used to working while maybe at an event or at a client meeting, but our assistants are having to adjust from all of the amenities in their office to now some more limited resources that they have at home. So navigating a huge work upheaval like we're all experiencing, it's just going to take some time to adjust to. We know that you're not all sitting there around with spare time. It's probably very much the opposite, right? But whatever time that you do or don't have available, we want to ensure that your productivity and professional development, can be considered and maintained, right? Maggie, I apologize. I think there's a little bit of feedback on your computer there. You might mute.
Okay.
Sorry about that. But I want to talk about ways here in InterAction that we can engage and we can make some really meaningful impacts. I think for many of us, we're already spread pretty thin, right? And it's okay to acknowledge that. We're there to support our firm, and however that happens, we're going to manage those expectations appropriately. For those that have some more time or bandwidth, there's certainly things that we can have them do. So as our end users are settling into their new roles, we see 5 items, that might be reasonable things to address right now, either passively in your daily work or maybe as targeted projects for those that have the time to manage it. So those things are contact care, message center, activities, and most specifically business development activities, working lists, and education opportunities. I know that these things can and should be done while we're all working at the office too, but as we discuss these things a little bit more closely, I want to think about how smaller, maybe more individual tasks or mini goals in InterAction specifically might help our users stay engaged in their daily routines, and at the same time maybe break up the day. So I want to start here with our end user discussion with contact care and the message center. These first 2 items are essentially dealing with sending updates and getting updates. I don't think it's a secret that contact maintenance is not always top of mind for our assistants and fee earners. It's not on top of mind for me all the time either. But maintaining contacts doesn't really have to be something we dedicate a chunk of time to, although you can, and I have, and that's great too. What I encourage users to do to begin their contact quality adventure is a passive observation to tidy up their records as needed. I don't usually ask my assistants to go out and find a lot of bad information all at once. But what I do ask them to do is look at the information that's coming to them. As our fee earners and professionals are working with clients, emailing and corresponding, let's verify that the data is consistent in InterAction. As assistants are working with different matters, maybe ensure the details that we have saved for the related parties are verified and accurate. Maybe put those contacts in a working list so we can find them easily later. I think our assistants are probably the main source of our contact data. Maggie mentioned that too, and they touch a lot of different contact details every day. If we're focused on the contacts that we're currently working with, and as others are solely focused on the contacts they're directly working with, over a short amount of time, our current relevant contacts are going to be verified and maintained and ready to use. As our users are doing this validation, maybe we use reminders to help with follow-up items that we need to come back to. Reminders deliver an email on your reminder date so you don't miss a pop-up that maybe I miss all the time from my calendar appointments. As always, during any kind of passive observation like we're doing here, I would really encourage our end users to look at any opportunities to add our contacts to lists. Let's focus on our practice group lists, our holiday list that might be an e-card this year, current event lists, even if they're virtual. The contacts that we're engaging with right now in this strange time, these might be the perfect people to get on our lists, showing these prospects that we want them at our legal events, either in person or virtual, however that's going to play out. For our marketing teams, and I know a lot of us here are in marketing, it's always really been about showing the love to our clients, right? But for our attorneys and our BD teams, that love turns into business and revenue. So it's important that we take care of our contacts and we have the right people on our lists so they're ready to send when we need to. For our end users that have the bandwidth and for firms that have this feature turned on, I would certainly encourage our users to maybe spend time updating their contacts in the message center by accepting those pending updates, sharing unresolved contacts. But at the same time, speaking of the message center, maybe now we can review our contact update or new contact settings. Maybe we're reviewing Smart Connect rules or other processes, looking for opportunities to assist our users, making their lives easier. Maybe with the added data quality options Maggie was talking about, we consider just automatically updating Outlook so we don't have to review the message center for those pending updates. Let's take away that duplicative task that they're having to go through, and let's just create the consistent information between our user lists and the firm list.
Right. And hey, Drew, if you don't mind, I jump in here. You may recall, this is for the benefit of everyone, of course, that we were working with that client not too long ago who they were impressed about, they had actually taken a lot of action on the data quality side, but that produced a lot of updates that were going down to their users, and they were concerned about that. Oh, my poor users have to now go through all of these things. I spent all this time doing it. Now they have to kind of go through and accept those. And we got to the point where we realized that the work she was doing was reliable. And they actually made some decisions right then and there to just start pushing updates down to their users. On the data quality side of things, if you guys are feeling confident about the work you're doing and the stuff that's coming in that you're allowing in, then there really should be no reason why you want them to, or you need them to review. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there are users out there who prefer to see what's coming back at their contacts, and that's fine. But we were able to kind of turn that on with her and make sure the users just didn't have one more thing to do. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's make the experience for our end users a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more seamless, and let's get the work taken care of a little bit more quickly, right? Perfect. As I look to more technical tasks, maybe looking at backlogged activities to help provide data that's going to help drive BD programs when we're all back in the office. Since we're just wrapping up Q1, and for a lot of our firms, maybe expenses have decreased over the last few weeks, maybe we consider a process of reviewing expense reports, maybe from January on, looking for BD reimbursements and adding those to InterAction, maybe looking for BD emails or calendar appointments we can save. While these expenses and engagements might be fewer right now, maybe we can catch up on those entries and they're ready to report on when we're all back in the office, if we can. Related to activities, if you're not already, I would certainly encourage all of our customers to consider using calendar appointments just as another way to capture that BD information. You know, a lot of valuable data is often saved within a calendar appointment, and we should be offering a way to our end users to give that information to us easily. There's ways that we can automatically capture calendar appointments, but we can also just provide the option for folks to give that data to us voluntarily. Whatever your firm decides is fine, but I think minimally offering that option is going to be really helpful to get that data into the database. Pivoting from that, if I'm looking for more efficiencies, I would really encourage our end users to look at maybe spending some time creating working lists. You know, Outlook does not offer robust contact grouping solutions, and InterAction is specifically programmed to do that. With our working lists, our users can group contacts for really any reason at all, maybe a matter list, practice group target lists, individual client lists, or an individual holiday list. Plus, we can share these contacts and lists to other folks and be added to, and the contacts on our working list are also shared to the firm list, and we can add them to our other marketing lists. Another peripheral benefit of our working lists is the ability for our end users to create their own contact segments, maybe like their individual or practice group prospects. And then we can monitor those contacts that are included in those working lists through alerts in IMO and the web client. The alert configuration provides additional options that we can focus on the changes and updates on just the contacts that are most important to you, and you can keep up to date with their engagements that way. Finally here, I want to talk about different ways that we can keep our end users engaged through activities maybe and professional development options. Excuse me. Either facilitated through your own internal training departments or maybe through the LexisNexis training resources that we have available. I think we're all in agreement that internal training teams right now are in a unique position. No one is sure when we're going to be back in the office or how long this new normal is going to last. Should we even create a virtual experience if we're going to be back in the office in 3 weeks or 6 weeks even? Are we even hiring right now to train new staff? So these are all a lot of questions for our training departments that are in the air right now. But as trainers ourselves, Maggie and I would probably agree that it's always a good time to keep engaged and keep our people involved in your firm processes. If I were an assistant, maybe a little training break is just what I need to split up the day. But I'm not talking about huge training shifts right now. That would be unrealistic. We're just looking at little ways that we can reach out. If we're working at home until the end of May, maybe we create and offer maybe virtual lunch and learns to review the things that we should be doing at home, not just about InterAction. Our training teams are firm-wide resources, right? So let's look at all of the technology that really isn't as user-friendly when we're not at the office and we're all trying to do our work from our kitchen table on a laptop screen. If our training teams have the ability to create self-guided learning tools, maybe videos or workbooks, that's also a great way to maintain our firm processes. When our daily routines change, things inevitably get dropped, and that's to be expected. But training has this unique role within our firms to bring the message of staying the course. And I think our users expect training to be the people that send that message. Virtual live sessions aren't always an option, so we could consider weekly tip sheets or maybe quick reference guides to help our users stay on top of those normal daily processes. Variations to those processes are inevitable, of course, but I think some semblance of normalcy is going to be really helpful to all of our psyches, right? If InterAction specifically is what you're looking to work with and you need some assistance from us with your staff outreach, LexisNexis offers end user tutorials for the Microsoft Outlook tool and the web client. Maggie and I are both happy to talk with you guys about the resources that LexisNexis has. Feel free to reach out to us after our webinar. So as we wrap up, I think Maggie will.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So just a quick summary, gang. You know, again, when it comes to the data quality side of things, which about half of you indicated that was your highest priority right now, you know, think about archiving those irrelevant contacts, right? Get them out of there. You're not deleting them, you're just moving them, right? So you move them out of the mix. You can always bring them back, but your focus right now needs to be on what's the highest priority. Reassess your DCM rules. You know, think about those tickets you're getting. Stop that bleeding if you don't need it. Accept, submit. Focus on that option. If you still have some reviews, that's okay, but you know, try to be ruthless about it, right? Set those rules to what's important and what's not important right now. Also, always stay ruthless with your ticket inbox, right? So whatever's left over in your ticket inbox, you can make some decisions about those review tickets. You can make some decisions about the types of tickets you're either getting or how you're processing them. Manage your duplicates as best you can, but again, prioritize. You can minimize the things you need to work on right now. Just focus on those really important ones, the ones you know that you're focused on right now during this weird time, supporting your clients. Again, maybe take a peek at alumni if that's helpful. And then get those contacts associated. There's so many trickle-down effects of association in your system, ensuring that, you know, we have the right information on those contact records, but also that we have them in the right lists potentially. So make sure that association gets done. We want to make sure all your contacts that should get mailings are getting the mailings right now in those communications.
Absolutely. And on the end user side, focus on your contact care. And if I were to prioritize, maybe look at the last 2 weeks of contacts that you have been emailing and make sure that those contacts are correct and current. When you complete that, maybe we go back to February and January, but let's just start with these current contacts because these are the folks that we're working with right now. Also look at your message center, making sure that that's a part of our end user process, or maybe taking that out of our end user process if we're able to do that. Focus on activities, BD activities specifically. Look at expense reports, emails, calendar appointments. Is there a way that we can just get the last month of BD activities saved and ready to go? And if it was that easy, maybe we can go back another month and take care of that. Looking at working lists, making some meaningful segmentations with your contacts matters. Practice groups, prospects, things like that we can share with our colleagues and get other people to contribute to those lists. And then finally, as trainers, Maggie and I would never miss the education opportunities that come with any situation. We think that's a great way to keep people engaged and focus on your firm goals and processes. So all 10 of these items here, not just a finite list, but things that you can certainly think about to help keeping your process going, staying the course, and getting ahead in your data. I want to thank you everybody again for joining us today. I'm going to pass it over to Annie to wrap us up.
Hey again. Thanks guys so much. That was fantastic. I just want to take everybody's attention quickly over to the right-hand side of your screen, where you have an opportunity to ask questions in that questions panel there. We'll let those start to roll in. It looks like I've had one that came through asking about how to access some of these training materials, Maggie. Is that something you could touch on?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a variety of things out on the InterAction support site. You can go to support.interaction.com. You'll need your firm's support site login to access that stuff. But once you come right in, you'll see an option for education resources. You can click right in there. We've got quick reference guides. There are some procedures in there, I believe. There are all sorts of resources for your end users and for you guys in terms of maybe data quality, right? So there's all sorts of things you can get at in there, guides, all sorts of things. So I'd encourage you to kind of start there and browse and see what you can find. And if there's something specific you're looking for, you can see our email addresses here on the screen. And some of you just have those saved in your Outlook already, but don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to work with you and help you find what you need. Okay.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's it here. So that goes ahead and concludes today's webinar. I would like to ask everybody to please complete a quick survey at the end of this. It just helps us build future webinars and events that are beneficial to you guys. Also, to learn more about all of the InterAction relevant information, we encourage you to join our InterAction CRM LinkedIn group. You can access this by going to the search bar in LinkedIn and typing in CRM InterAction and then requesting to be admitted. Thanks again so much, Maggie and Drew. This has been a great session, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you, everyone.